Our guest today is Johannes Leroux. Johannes began his entrepreneurial journey with Brahma's Draft, an original concept of brandy and Coke on tap, which carved a niche within the South African beverage market. After successfully establishing Brahma's Draft and later creating the Duchess, the world's first alcohol-free gin and tonic, Johannes has moved on to his most recent venture. He now dedicates his full attention to Dope, a pioneering brand in cannabis beverage sector. Dope offers a refreshing cannabis-infusing spring water, subtly flavored and microdosed with CBD to ensure a gentle, enjoyable buzz without the hangover. Welcome, Johannes, and thank you for joining us here today. Let's start off with the first question. How did you get into the beverage industry?
Definitely, thank you for having me. It's comfortable sitting here on one of your saloon beds. The backstory of my career in beverages is also, I think, similar to yours. We didn't necessarily study to become beverage entrepreneurs or bed kings, but it came from sort of my first pivot. I was studying property investment and about to finish in 2009 with the global crash of the property sector. So I quickly realized, well, if I was going to make any success out of this, I might have to look at a different category. And a friend of mine was starting an advertising agency at the time. So I started spending more time at the agency and less time studying, and eventually said, well, this agency is doing really well. We built it from kind of 2 people to 20 people over the course of 2 years, and decided to be the entrepreneur, to be the college dropout, and now having to like really prove myself and put myself out there. So obviously through advertising, learned a lot about marketing, a lot about consumers, how and just how people behave and how they make choices. But I've always had this feeling that I wanted to create my own products and my own brands. So after practicing with other people's brands for a couple of years, I decided to go to my little black book of ideas. And as any Afrikaans sort of 22-year-old, I thought the best idea in the world would be to put brandy and Coke on tap. So that was my introduction to the beverage world or the alcohol sector. And like you mentioned, I've now moved on to my third venture in the space. So exciting to tell you more about it.
Yeah, I think as we mature, our ideas also mature in terms of our own needs. Like you mentioned, a 22-year-old, I would assume that, that was something high on the list. And you've kind of changed now from that to a non-alcoholic beverage and to something beyond that, like you've mentioned earlier. Tell us about the journey from where you kind of started with this alcoholic drink and then the non-alcoholic and now your newest venture.
Definitely. I think you're completely right. I haven't even thought about it like that. But definitely you end up inventing and creating things for that you know best. And the problems that you see you need to solve. So we recently were doing with Dope, the latest product, which is the cannabis infused beverage. We're doing a massive Father's Day campaign because we're saying like, well, it's difficult to be a dope dad if you're hungover in the morning. And like I've got a 2-year-old son. So for me, it made a lot of sense to say, well, I like whether you decide to drink a few drinks at night or not, that 2-year-old's going to be on your bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm ready to play, basically. And I think I also understand that it's a very stressful time in people's lives. So 25 to 40 is probably some of the most stressful time in your life because you're not only building your career, but you're probably starting a family. And you're not quite. There's still financial stresses. There's you're not the boss yet. You still kind of have to like find your own way. So I realized it's a very stressful time. And interestingly enough, we're also looking at the data, saw that it's a sector of people that the age group that drinks the most alcohol because of that. So I think we saw like it's almost a perpetuating cycle that I found myself in too, like honestly, like to be like, okay, well, you stress. So you're like, okay, cool, let me just like have a beer or drink a glass of wine to take the stress away. And then like because of like not sleeping well, you end up like waking up groggy, more anxious, more stress leads to another drink after work kind of thing. So it's a bit of a bad cycle. So I was with alcohol-free drinks with the Duchess. I think our goal was like, whoa, we need this alcohol thing. It's kind of like there's a lot of negative effects. Let's almost go to the opposite side and say, well, we need to give people choice. Let's create something where if you choose not to drink, you can still have an adult beverage and socialize. And I think definitely that category has now exploded. It's a multi-billion-dollar category around the world, mostly alcohol-free beer. I had a talk yesterday with the guys from Diageo, and they say that Guinness 0.0 now makes up more than 10% of Guinness sales globally. Wow. And they're only in 3 territories with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what was the growth of that before, let's say, the whole need or the shift came into effect?
So, well, I think what we realized when we launched the Duchess also was that the demand was already much bigger than the supply. And I think that's what a lot of the alcohol producers took a long time to introduce these non-alcoholic offerings because, quite frankly, they were doing well selling alcohol. We were talking about this earlier, saying like the world becoming like more and more intensive, and I think like everything moving faster than it's ever moved. Like, I mean, I'm kind of I see myself as a young person. I struggle to keep up with like what's the newest thing in AI. Like, how am I gonna up my productivity constantly? It's almost like there's an extreme amount of pressure on people. I think it makes sense that people start realizing, well, I need to also change my lifestyle to be able to cope with that. Because if I drink too often or I'm not looking after myself, I quite frankly won't be able to keep up. It's actually, so the world is changing, and that's why the demand for products are also changing.
No, I definitely agree. I think especially after the whole pandemic, people shifted their focus and especially realized how important wellness and health is. The whole I'm going to work till I'm dead and sleep is for the birds. That shift really changed, and I think with that, the need for the consumption of alcohol, the whole self-medication element of it has really changed as well. So I completely agree, and it's also how we consume the information about what is good for you. We actually want something. We tap into what we know we want to achieve. Okay, I want a better night's rest. I want to feel better. I want to enjoy a drink, but I don't want to have the after effects of it. So I completely agree with that, transitioning from, let's say, before the pandemic to afterwards, feeding that need. We've seen it the same way with our the demand for good quality sleeping products. People started investing in their health and that realm, especially after the pandemic. Let's chat about the product development. I know with when I started out with the idea and the concept of Sloom, it took especially long, especially in South Africa, with a certain conservative mindset in terms of how you create a product and certain suppliers. What was your journey with let's say, start with Brunnerstraat, and how did it become easier as you've created your new ventures?
Yeah, sure. I think it's always daunting. At first, you think it's going to be a lot easier, and it ends up being always more complex. What we've really specialized in over the last few years is that, and what I love, what I enjoy, is that 0 to 1 moment. Like, so taking something from idea to like a product. So it's definitely something that we focus on a lot, less so than scaling the product. There are amazing people and businesses, to be honest, that have the infrastructure that can take something from like that 2 to 100, right? But there aren't actually a lot of people that do that 0 to 1. You know, you hear about a lot of people, that always say, listen, I want to start something, but struggle to do that. So it's something where we definitely say, let's play to our strengths and develop. And it really comes with practice, right? Throwing yourself into the deep end. A funny story about the start of Brana's draft was obviously, it's one thing to get brandy. There's a lot of brandy around. But I didn't think this is going to be an issue. But I was like, oh, I need Coke. So I called Coca-Cola, and they're like, we're not going to sell you Coca-Cola syrup to go put in a brandy. That's ridiculous. I'm like, but everyone drinks it with Coca-Cola already. They're like, no, we can't associate. So I went down the list. I was like, okay, Bashoes, Pepsi. And then eventually somebody, I think, just felt sorry for me. And they're like, well, why don't you create your own cola? Have you spoken to a flavoring house? And I'm like, what's a flavoring house? That sounds amazing. And obviously now we work very closely with flavoring houses, and we develop products completely from scratch. And what a flavoring house is basically is they've got thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of flavors, natural flavors, anything you basically can think of, they can create. So you can create a brief, and then they will develop the product for you based on putting the flavors together, almost like a recipe. And then you basically sign off the product. We went through I think 50 iterations of the Coca-Cola and 100 of the Duchess, because that's a much more complicated product. And yeah, then you end up signing that off and you buy the product, and then you've created your own cola. But I didn't know that. Sometimes you have to throw yourself in the deep end and just start making the phone call. And the one phone call leads to the next phone call, leads to the next phone call. And then 20 steps down the line, you've learned something new. You've met 19 people, and hopefully you've got your Coca-Cola.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people don't know the behind the scenes work that goes into developing a product from scratch. And a lot of people think that I've got the idea, and then if they don't have the expertise behind it, or the knowledge, or the industry knowledge, it might not be as easy as just drop shipping, where we found that if it wasn't for the knowledge that I've gained within the industry, formulating foams for a foam plant, and also selling other brands of mattresses, I wouldn't have easily come up with a concept like Sloom. And that knowledge is the wealth that put you above everyone else in the market. So I think that's definitely what makes it easier. So essentially, you're the subject expert within that field. Would you say that you'd be able to start a venture with that isn't in the beverage industry? It would be a lot harder.
I think there are transferable steps to just starting a business from scratch. There are definitely a lot of things that I think you can apply to multi-category. But yeah, specializing in beverages has made it easier to launch something. Although I must tell you, even the difference between doing an alcoholic drink to start with, and then doing a non-alcoholic drink, and then now doing a cannabis drink with dope, is in a way already completely different.
Yeah,
it's already because it's different categories, it's different licensing, it's different rules and regulations, different suppliers, different distributors. So in a way, it is. Although it all sounds okay, cool, I'm in the beverage industry, each one has been a completely new sort of learning curve. And I think especially if you look at this future of cannabis drinks and the potential of it all over the world, but then still navigating is this drugs? Exactly. Alcohol, we're fine with alcohol, that's fine, but now a lot of people still feel that cannabis is a drug, and getting over, number one, the stigma around it, and number two, the regulations is definitely a completely new challenge.
Yeah, does it feel like a Breaking Bad vibe entering the cannabis scene, especially in South Africa, where the regulations are a lot more strict compared to other countries or markets that you guys are currently exploring? Let's chat about the dope venture that you
The
guys
journey,
are. The
yes.
journey. Yeah.
I think it's changed a lot in the last over the last 5 years. When we first envisioned the product, we have at first we were like importing our CBD from Switzerland, and like it was like, is it going to make its way in through customs or not? And you had to have like a pharmacist to dose the product into your infuse it at your plant, and everything was quite it was really, it felt much more like a Breaking Bad situation back then. I think as the knowledge and people's perception and the case study basically of been developing, people realize, well, you know what, if you even just compare it to alcohol, it actually it's a lot safer, right? And it's definitely not this like taboo that we used to think of it. So now we work with local labs to create our CBD from local farms in South Africa. It's a product that's being sold through Pick n Pay, Checkers. Like, to give you an idea about the Pick n Pay said, we will never put something with the name dope on our shelves.
Yeah.
And we had to build a presentation, and I had to like go up and present to like the heads of Pick n Pay that dope means cool.
Yeah.
Not heroin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you know? So
Yeah.
so that like just had to, and then interestingly enough, the penny dropped when the guy took the can of dope home, and his 9-year-old walked past him and said, "That's dope. That's cool."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, okay. So this is
Now
what
it makes sense.
kids actually think that they
Yeah.
don't. It's not this taboo thing that we used to think in the past, and actually, which we're not going to go into politics, but which was wildly driven by obviously the war on drugs, and it had its own like agenda." Nothing to do with cannabis, but so I think I'm glad that things are opening up, and more than anything, it's being led by consumers, because in the end, like regulations are driven by what people believe, and you can see it every single election in America, and even in South Africa, we're seeing massive leaps towards full federal legalization of cannabis, and mushrooms maybe.
Is that perhaps the part of the beyond
Maybe
beverage?
that could be the beyond alcohol. It's definitely a dream to create a mushroom drink in the future. Maybe that's number 4.
Yeah. Well, I must say, if you look at the studies and the research behind the effects of alcohol and your health and what it does with, if you just look at the effects of alcohol and your sleep, and then you compare it with the effects of CBD, it's night and day. And it's basically what you've also said, that what we believe what is right and wrong is regulation. And it's been pushed during the lockdown, and especially, when the elements have changed in what you feel right and wrong. So we've always felt like the sleep element and the research behind it should support good and healthy sleep. And that's why we've felt like, okay, your brand, the Duchess, and even now with dope, aligns perfectly with that. How would you see that that's something that you bring in forth? Because I know with Duchess, it's something that you've pushed, especially.
Definitely. I think if you go and look out there, there's amazing science now showing more than anything, there's a lot of science showing the benefits for CBD and with sleep, but there's a lot more science showing the negative effects or the negative impact that alcohol has on your sleep and your REM sleep specifically. And even just one unit of alcohol, the impact it has, it literally 1 unit of alcohol reduces your REM sleep by 50% at night, and then it increases by the amount. It actually just deteriorates. So I always say that the biggest difference in drinking a dope or a Duchess isn't necessarily the health benefits within the Duchess or dope. It's the taking the alcohol out of the equation, right? And I think you only have to test it yourself and I think intuitively, if you've woken up after a few drinks versus you've woken up after like not having a drink for a couple of days. You intuitively know you've slept a lot better, you slept a lot deeper, and you feel a lot more rested. And it's definitely something I think you touched on, sort of a bigger trend behind both businesses is that the amount of people that say, listen, I feel tired these days. It's something I hear over and over and over. People are saying, I'm tired. So that's almost like a bigger epidemic in a way, that the world is tired. So and both of these products actually speak to that and actually can help solve that bigger problem. So I think that definitely we're on a similar journey.
No, I think definitely. If you look at how our target audience has grown in terms of the needs, people really feel like they want to invest in their health. So and that also speaks in different markets. Would you say that your target audience is somebody that is wellness in tuned, or do you think that it's a general audience that might just want something that's a bit different from the negative effects of alcohol? Would you convince a conservative lady to
try a dope?
Trump, yeah.
I definitely think it's heading that way. I mean I think the target audience as a whole, we've always said it's not as much it's not your teetotalers. It's not like alcohol is a part of our lives. It's a part of our occasions. It's a part of celebrations. And to be honest, I personally still drink alcohol. It's not like I'm a teetotal or like completely sober. I just think that what people need number one and are looking for is choice. So to be able to have to make the choice, either to be able to make the choice of drinking a alcoholic product and then, or having 2-3 alcoholic products and then being able to move over to a non-alcoholic option, or to say, listen, I don't want to drink during the week, so I'm drinking non-alcoholic beers or gin and tonics or dopes during the week, and then on the weekend I can relax and I can have a couple of drinks. So it's just about, so it's less so the both sides into it, and much more, I think, the core that's moving. And the movement is coming from just people wanting to be able to choose, and not that the only option is like a Coca-Cola or a kiddies type of drink. So there is a general move, understanding towards wellness, and I think it's got to do more with the pressures and the requirements on people than necessarily everyone waking up and being like wellness oriented. I think people have this wellness. Everyone's now all of a sudden woken up to wellness, but it's I always what is the action that caused the reaction? The focus on wellness is a reaction to the pressures of the world. Not necessarily just this out of the blue.
It's not demonizing alcohol. It's just the shift that I do want something alternative. If you look at how many people are searching the internet or Instagram, the healthiest types of alcohol, that just gives you an indication, okay, but I do want something to drink and a night out, but I want the healthier option. And now you're offering something that's an alternative to alcohol, something that's beyond alcohol, like you've mentioned.
Yeah, and then something that can still make you feel something similar. So the US product, like I said, actually includes THC, which now through science we've been able to isolate just the THC cannabinoid from the hemp derived plant, or they call it Delta-9, and it has a very similar feeling to alcohol, but it doesn't have any of the negative effects on sleep or hangovers. So that feels to me like, okay, well, if you have that option, you still can socialize, you still feel relaxed, you have a similar feeling to alcohol, but you don't have those negative effects. It does feel like there's a big opportunity there. But it's still definitely a work in progress. Also, I think another something to realize is alcohol has always been, and this is maybe something that is a bit people are also realizing. It's always been presented almost like the old cigarette ads of like young, healthy people that are sporty, all drinking alcohol, and that alcohol brings people together and all these things. But if you think about it, to be honest, that's not really what the product delivers. That's what they market really well.
Yeah.
But the product actually delivers quite a different environment.
Yeah.
So I think people are realizing that. They're much more conscious about that. And we spoke about it earlier. People for a long time realized that you are what you eat. But I think they've now also realized, well, then you're also what you drink.
Yeah.
So I think that's important that's an important shift that's happened over the last few years.
Yeah, they say that alcohol is like stealing happiness of tomorrow. You know, you're happy now, but tomorrow you're going to feel the effects.
Yeah, and actually, and I think just the way I'm speaking like that, I think even 10 years ago, if people weren't talking about dopamine and serotonin and the way the brain works and how that impacts our like emotions, this is all kind of new.
Yeah.
Right? Especially new to like the masses.
Yeah.
Like, but now it's kind of common knowledge. And if you think about your world like that, and that you have a finite amount of dopamine and serotonin, and that this product actually depletes that, and then you have to rebuild it from scratch, and that's why you don't feel good in the mornings. Just being conscious of that sort of science and biology, I think already makes you think differently about drinking that. That extra unit.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at the effects on sleep, like you've mentioned, it affects your deep sleep. So essentially, if you don't go into that restorative deep sleep, it affects your mood, your hormones the next day. And something that I've always realized is if I have something to drink just before bed, like a glass of wine, it also affects my body's ability to control the temperature. So it's also, you would sleep hotter. So if you're a hot sleeper, then having a drink before bed or even throughout the day is not a great idea. So I'd love the idea of having something that I can consume that doesn't have that effect. You've mentioned that you guys are now exploring different markets, especially the US market. As a proudly South African, how do you keep yourself motivated to stay in South Africa, especially with business confidence going down and everything? I know this is your market is completely different if you look isolated within South Africa, but it does affect everyone. It affects us. How, as a young person and a South African, do you keep yourself motivated and doing business in South Africa?
I think that's a really good question, and it's always about, for me, I'm agnostic as to where I do business. It's very much about where the product market fit is the best, right? So I traditionally, South Africa is an incredible place to incubate a brand. There aren't many barriers to entry. You can do a proof of concept here for a fraction of the price, and you can do it internationally. But unless you've got a product that speaks to like the majority of South Africans, and that isn't as niche as potentially a cannabis water, you do need to always look globally. But that's from a business perspective. From a living perspective, there's nowhere else I would ever want to live in the world in Cape Town. So what we also do, and what benefits that we see is say that although South Africa might not always be the best market for our products, we have some of the best people. So we do a lot of our central management. I myself live in Cape Town. A lot of our operations gets managed out of Cape Town. All of our marketing gets done in Cape Town because we've got all these amazing creatives. So with Dope specifically, we invest 10% back into African creators, which then leads to beautiful sort of unique ads and marketing material that we use to sell more dope in America. That creates a bigger sort of cut that comes back to South Africa. So I think it's not about or, it's and. So how do we use their market and our sort of skill sets and services to actually create a win-win situation?
Yeah, well, that makes sense, especially when you know your team. if you've grown your team from scratch and they know your vision, it makes it a lot easier to execute your product where you're going. And then it can be a lot easier to replicate the success in an international market where it's a lot bigger. Definitely. But your product that you're going with Dope it's so innovative. It's something, that's the international markets are ripe for.
Yep.
What exposure do you think we as South Africans get to help us give us that advantage?
That's a good question, and so I was recently in the US, and it's amazing always to meet South Africans abroad because they're always like performing. They're doing so well, and there's a couple of guys that are doing that are almost researching that. I don't know if you know Nick from Feldskin, but he started this network now. He's calling the Lacquer Network of like South Africans all over the world working together, and it highlights like the ability of South Africans to almost like above average perform and find solutions to problems, right? Like, and we even have it as part of some of like it feels like it's an I'll say it in Afrikaans, but it's more a South African thing. Is like a boer maak 'n plan. Like there's always this like that's a feeling I feel all South Africans share, and they're always finding a solution. So. We definitely, compared to, European or first world situation, have to find solutions sometimes to our problems. We're a lot more private. The private companies and private entrepreneurs are the ones fixing the problems. A lot. And it's not necessarily just bad management. It's just like we're not at that level yet. So there is also a lot more opportunities. There's a lot more gaps. So if you're living in a first world where everything kind of works, I think you kind of switch off towards like that side, that innovative side, that entrepreneurial drive. So I think in general, being part of like a still developing country is probably a big part of it. And then maybe it's a little special South Africanness also with it, like to be able to work together with so many different cultures and still like create products that are world class. I think is unique, and it's there's every single day working on that that makes us be able to compete globally or even be better than the people on that side.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a unique connection that we share with each South African.
Yeah.
You're also owner of a Sloom mattress.
Yes.
One of the first adopters.
I'm an early adopter.
Yeah. What made you buy a Sloom? What stood out back then? Or was it just like easy to go on and search, this looks like something I'll buy?
So, yeah, I actually saw the concept in the States when I was working there. So with a similar type of brand. And I was like, okay, I wonder if that's available in South Africa, and was very pleasantly surprised that you had launched Sloom, I think, recently then. So, or as any entrepreneur, I was maybe even looking at, maybe I should do this. Always first looking at the opportunity, but I was like, okay, no, I'm glad somebody's doing it. And also I need a bed. So let's do it. It was delivered within I think 3 days. I just it was a new house. The baby was being born in a few weeks from then. So it worked out perfectly. I still very happily sleep on it. And I've convinced at least 4 or 5 other people to buy one. Amazing. So I just start getting commission on all these sales.
We'll have to chat about that. So how's your sleep? How important is your sleep for you, especially as an entrepreneur? Obviously you made the shift in terms of how you see your wellness and what you consume. But have you made that switch in terms of the importance of sleep? Because a lot of people haven't. A lot of corporates really is almost in a fight with sleep. It's unproductive to sleep. What's your stance on that?
I definitely think of anything you can do for your business and for productivity, it's sleep. It's probably the highest ranked for me. Out of everything. Not saying that that's actually I'm great at it yet. I still think there's still a journey to walk. There's a lot more consistency to be made, and in like my routine and like how everything works. But like I said, with having a younger child, you also realize, okay, well,
it's not always possible.
Well, and you have to like focus on it even more, because if you're going to be up at 5:30 and be present with them, and then do a full day's work, and then you need to be able to, it becomes more important. So I think it's literally like up there as one of my highest priorities. And I like sleeping. Yeah. Who doesn't like sleeping? It's like, might as well like enjoy it, right?
Exactly. Well, there's a lot of people that would say, but it's for the birds, it's for the fools. They'll sleep when they're dead. And I think that's probably in the same era where doctors smoked. I mean, it's just it's like how they marketed an element.
So I haven't seen a bird sleeping. I don't know if you've ever seen a bird
sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
All right, so let's conclude the interview and the podcast with one last thing. Your advice for anybody wanting to start a business in South Africa and be an entrepreneur.
My advice, maybe first from a business perspective, I think it's very important to, I said it earlier, product market fit. So really understanding 3 things, but mostly your product, like what is your product, understanding your product well, and then understanding who you're going to sell it to. It sounds basic, but a lot of people don't focus on that. And I've made the mistake sometimes not understanding what the size of a market is, or how well my product speaks to that market. So I think that's just from a business perspective. And I think then from a personal perspective is if you're going on the journey, it is intensive. It's tough. There's a lot of you're doing a lot of it alone, and there's a lot of pressure on you, and it's important to take care of yourself because founders burnout is like very real, and it's also something where sleep and healthy habits can help with. But I think it's what's most important is taking time for yourself, being in a good routine, and like just talking to other people about like your challenges, because it can become very overwhelming because you're always like, you're never celebrating your wins because you're already thinking about the next thing. And it's very important to take a breath and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And drink a dope. Chill out.
Definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, and all the best with dope. I'm definitely going to search for it, and as soon as legislation allows it, I'm definitely buying that THC one as well.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for having me.